What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Blizzcon is next month, and we should be getting a bunch of information about Overwatch 2. There's going to be lots of new stuff, heroes, maps, character skins, and more. I don't think that they're going to announce a release date for the game just yet. I think the idea that it's going to be released early this year is probably not going to happen. We still should get a bunch of information. But in addition to all that, Overwatch 2 gives Blizzard the opportunity to make a lot of changes that would have otherwise been too difficult to make to Overwatch 1 just through normal patches. Over the last couple years, I put together a list of stuff that I'd like to see changed or added to the game, and some of it has already been implemented, like the ability to sort icons. But there's still more that I think would benefit the game, so today I'm going to go through some of the things on my wish list to add or change to Overwatch 2, and hopefully someone at Blizzard is watching. The first thing on the list is something that I and other players have been asking for ever since the game was still in beta, and that is adding hero and ability numbers to the game. Stuff like rate of attack, move speed, percentage bonuses, all that sort of stuff. Over the years, Blizzard has given us several different reasons for why these numbers are not in the game, but with Overwatch 2, it seems like a great opportunity to finally do it. It's frustrating because Blizzard will give us the exact changes in the patch notes. For example, they'll say that an attack recovery was increased from 0.6 up to 0.7, but other than that, those patch notes, there's no other place to find accurate information. Sure, there are a couple of wikis, but quite often the information in those wikis is either wrong or outdated. So first thing on the wish list is adding ability and hero stats to the game, so I don't have to make custom matches with the workshop in order to try to figure this stuff out. The next item, however, is quite a bit bigger of a request, and that is the addition of Versus mode. There's a series of games called Left 4 Dead, which was incredibly fun to play. In fact, the Archives missions in Overwatch and the upcoming Overwatch 2 campaigns are quite similar to the campaign mode in Left 4 Dead, where you have 4 players working cooperatively against a huge amount of enemies as the players move through a map. However, Left 4 Dead had something else, which was the Versus mode. In this, there were 4 people on both teams. One team would try to move through the campaign as normal, and the other team would get to control special, stronger enemies. So while one team was trying to make it all the way through the map, the other team was trying to stop them. After the first team made it as far as they could, they would switch sides, and then Team 2 would try to make it as far as they can, and whoever makes it the farther is the winner. It's kind of like the payload maps in normal Overwatch, except your team has to move as far as they can, and you go to checkpoints and that sort of stuff. It's an unbelievably fun game mode with an incredible amount of replayability. I don't know if Blizzard has anything like this planned for the Overwatch 2 campaigns, but even if it isn't something that gets released right away when the game gets launched, I would absolutely like to see this added to the game at some point, even if it's later on in a DLC or an extra patch or an expansion or something, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is such an unbelievably fun game mode, and the Overwatch 2 campaign maps look like they would work great for this type of game mode. The next thing on the wish list is something that I think would greatly improve team coordination in the normal quick play and competitive play game modes, and that would be a player location tag. I don't think that a minimap is necessary in Overwatch because all the players on both teams are only ever fighting over one objective at any point in time. However, using callouts in Overwatch is very difficult because, with the exception of the pro players on pro teams, no one has really bothered to create and use a definitive list of locations for every map. Normally, you'll just hear someone say McCree on the right, or someone up top, or one of the best that you can ever hear is, there's an enemy over there, which is, of course, an incredibly useful callout. Needless to say, none of these are very specific and not helpful. Even using directional things, where you're telling people up, down, left, or right, that only works if everybody is facing the same way. If one of your players happen to get turned around, their right is not going to be the same as yours, and it just makes the callouts more difficult when you're not giving specific locations instead. So what I'm suggesting is very simply adding a small amount of text somewhere on the screen that tells the player what part of the map they're in. As a result, over time, players will learn the name of these locations and be able to use them to make better callouts. Instead of hearing something like Genji top left, you would hear Genji in hotel, Roadhog in market, Widow on balcony. This might seem like a small thing to change, but I believe it would be a significant improvement to the game. The next thing on the list, something that I think would be really fun to have, is faction events. These are going to be kind of like mini events, but let's be honest, the mini events aren't exactly all that involved. You win a couple matches, you get a reward, you win a couple more, you get another one, and you win 3 more, and you get the final reward. And that's pretty much it. And then for the rest of the mini event, you can't really participate. There's nothing for you to do because you already unlocked the 3 rewards. So I think faction events would be really amazing and more interactive with the player base, and it would last through the entire duration of the mini event instead of just the first couple days. There are different ways that they could handle the faction events, but essentially it boils down to having one group go against the other group, and the players have to pick a side for what they want to go with. And it doesn't need to be something as boring as just Overwatch versus Talon every single time. You can have Null Sector versus the Junkers, or Los Muertos versus Vishkar. Any of the groups that they have in the game, or that they have in the lore, they could add to these faction events. Obviously, rewards would be very important, but I don't think locking out the rewards to only the winner would be a good idea. I think the rewards should be available to everyone. It should just be determined by the side that wins. So, for example, you could have Null Sector versus the Junkers, and if Null Sector wins, then Orisa gets a custom legendary skin that they make for the next month or something. And if the Junkers win, then Roadhog gets a custom legendary skin that they make for the next month. Now, when that skin comes out, everyone will be able to get it. It's just which one, the Orisa or the Roadhog, is determined by which of the sides ends up winning the faction event. So if you want the Orisa skin, then you need to play for the Null Sector, and you need to win as many matches as you can so that team keeps getting points, and then Orisa gets the skin. Or if you want the Junkers, the same thing. You do that, and then Roadhog gets a skin. So everyone is able to get the ultimate reward for the faction event. It's just determined by which side that wins. And of course, you can have lesser rewards like sprays and voice lines and stuff, and you can have those restricted to only the side that you're playing on. So if you choose the Null Sector, then you only get the Null Sector sprays and only the Null Sector voice lines. There's many, many different ways that Blizzard can handle this, but I think it would be nice to have it once every couple months. You can have 2 different groups that are going to be in this type of event. I think that would be awesome, and I would really like to see that for Overwatch 2. If you want an example of how this type of event can work, I'm going to put a link down below. Team Fortress 2 had a Soldier versus Demo Man event quite a few years back, and it was incredibly popular, and it was very successful, and that is kind of the idea for the events that I'm suggesting in Overwatch 2. So I'll put a link to that down below. You can read a little bit more about it and see how they handled it and how they did the rewards and that sort of stuff. The next item on the list is probably a little more complicated than it would initially appear, and that is the ability to change, resize, and just move the HUD around. And the HUD is going to be your health, your ultimate icon, the abilities, the ammo, all that sort of stuff. Because when I'm playing, I'm looking straight ahead at the crosshair and I'm looking at the enemies and stuff. And it's a little difficult for me to see the cooldowns for my abilities. Like, I have to quickly glance away, and I don't like that. When I used to play World of Warcraft, I would move my ability icons closer to the middle of the screen, so that way I could look at the enemies and I could look at the ability icons at the same time, and I could know exactly when the cooldowns were going to be available and all that sort of stuff. And I would just like to be able to move stuff around on the HUD. There are also other little things that are kind of annoying. For example, you can't see the total elapsed match time if someone is using voice chat, because their voice chat icon will cover up the clock. So that's just kind of annoying, and I would like to move that down just a little bit so that I can see it. So being able to rearrange and move and resize the HUD would be amazing, and I know I definitely would like to see it, and I'm sure that there are plenty of other players that would as well. And speaking of changes to the HUD, the next item is something that we already have in spectator mode, where at the top of the screen you can see all of the player health, the ultimate charge, all that sort of stuff for both teams. Now, maybe if you're in game, you don't have access to the enemy team, you can only see yours. But I think that would be incredibly beneficial to have your team up on top of the screen where you can see the player health and also the ult charge just at a glance and know what's going on. Because if you see that, oh, hey, look, 2 of my team have been eliminated, it's probably not a good idea to use my ultimate right now, right? Then I think that could be incredibly helpful. Yes, you should have the awareness of knowing that your teammates have been eliminated, but even then, people kind of get caught in the moment and that sort of thing. And I just think having your team's health and their ultimate charge at the top of the screen, just like we have in spectator mode, would be an incredibly good thing to have. And once more, just like a lot of the other options, you could turn it on or off. If you want to have it, have it. If you don't, then don't. Whether or not you can have the enemy team up there, I know some games like CSGO have that, where it will show you the enemies and how much health they have and that sort of thing, but maybe not for Overwatch. Maybe just your team. But even if it's just that, I think that would be a great improvement. The next item on the list is map select for, at a minimum, quick play game mode, but I think it would work in competitive just as well. And I want to be clear about what kind of map select I'm suggesting, because there are a couple of different kinds. The one where you go into a match and then all 12 of the players pick the map you want to play on, I don't think that's a good idea. Instead, I think you should pick the maps you want to play on before you ever even queue into a match. CSGO has a system like this. I think something could work, although it would probably need to be modified at least a little bit for Overwatch. I know one of the concerns that people have is that someone would just play King's Row 24/7 and that's it, and you could kind of artificially boost up your SR and your ranking because you're just playing on the same map over and over, and maybe your character is really good at that map, and therefore you kind of get higher in rank than you should. I understand that. There's an easy way to deal with that, which would require just a minimum number of map selects. So you can pick what maps you want to play on, but you have to pick at least 4 or 5 or whatever there is, because there's about a dozen plus maps out there right now. So if you have to pick at least half of them, then there's just no way that you can just keep playing that same one map over and over again. You'll get to pick and play the maps that you want to play, but you can't focus down onto that one map and then artificially inflate your rank. The next concern would be longer queue times, but I don't actually think that would always be the case. Sure, if you're picking the minimum number of maps, and the maps that you're picking aren't exactly the most popular, like Horizon and Paris, then yeah, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But if you're picking all of the maps, or if you're at least picking the popular ones, then I can very likely see your queue time going down, being shorter than what it currently is in the live version of the game. By being willing to play any of the maps, you're going to get into the matches faster than you are now. So you kind of have to make the choice. Do you want to play on just the maps that you like, in which case you might have to wait a little bit longer, or are you willing to play on all of the stuff and then you get into games really fast? It's kind of like the flex queue role that we currently have. You know, if you want to play DPS, you're going to have to wait a little while, but if you queue as flex, well, you're going to get into a match probably within a minute or less. Another concern is unpopular maps, because every time map select comes up, I always hear someone say, well, I actually enjoy Horizon Lunar Colony, or I enjoy the Paris map, but if this comes out, then I'll never get to play it. Well, yes and no. You'll still be able to play it, just not as often, because there aren't that many players that want to play on it. And I understand that you want to be able to play on those maps, but the fact of the matter is, 11 other people shouldn't be forced to play on a map they hate, just so that you can play on a map that you like. If you want to play on Horizon Lunar Colony or the Paris map, that's fine, but you're going to have to wait until you can find 11 other people that are also willing to play on that map. Again, people that hate the map shouldn't be forced into playing on it. But believe it or not, there's actually quite a benefit to these unpopular maps, as it gives Blizzard information that they otherwise wouldn't have. It's obvious what maps are super unpopular, like Horizon Lunar Colony and Paris, because people complain about them constantly. And Blizzard knows what maps tend to be popular, like King's Row. But what about all the rest? If players have the option to choose whether or not they're going to play on Hanamura, or Temple of Anubis, or Rialto? Are they choosing to play that map, or are they choosing to avoid that map? That is incredibly valuable information to Blizzard. If a map turns out to be very unpopular and people are not playing it, then it tells Blizzard that they probably need to go and rework that map at least a little bit to make it more fun for the player base. And in addition, they also get more information about what things to avoid in future maps. There are more items in my wish list, but the stuff that I showed in this video are the ones that I would like to see added the most. And on top of that, I think they're probably the most reasonable ones that Blizzard would be willing to consider and would be able to actually add to the game. But what are some of the things that you would like to see for Overwatch 2? If there's anything, whether it is a change to characters, or it's a change to a system, or whatever else in the game, what would your wish list for Overwatch 2 look like? Let me know down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like before you leave, and remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.